What's up, everybody? My name is Daz. Welcome back to Motor Tic Mastery. I hope you're so well today. I had a question in the comment section of one of my previous videos that asked me, what was it like growing up with my tics? How did I manage it, or what did I do with it when I was younger? What was my experience like? What did my parents do? How did they relate to it? And so I'm gonna share a little bit here about my story when I was younger. I share more detail, truthfully, in my online program as well. But I feel like since I recorded those videos on my online program, I might actually look at it differently now. Does that make sense? It's like when we look back at something, we might look back at it through the lens of who we are today. And so my memory of what I was like when I was 12, 13 years old today is different to what my memory was like of who I was in 10, 12, like a few years ago. Because our memories are constantly changing, they're not fixed. If I think back to my experience of having a ticket, it was so interweaved as a part of my body that it wasn't something that I was aware of I needed or could be fixed. I didn't want to be doing the movements, but I wasn't really aware that this is something that needs fixing. This is something that needs to be healed or gone. It was just a part of me. It was so intertwined. The movements of the body were so intertwined with my inner world sensations of life, my experiences of life, my body, my emotions, my thoughts, my movements. Like, they were all kind of one orb of the same blob. So I wasn't aware enough when I was younger to sort of step out myself and look at me and go, oh, something's up here. My parents, at the beginning, they didn't really know what to do. I remember asking them a few years ago, sort of, when you saw me tic for the first time, what did you do? And they could see it. And at the beginning, I remember them telling me, stop that, stop that, stop that. I had a little bit of OCD things going on, having to pull up my socks, things like that. And the initial response from my parents was, stop that, don't do that. Like the traditional parenting way. Don't do that. If your child is doing something that you don't think is right, you tell them. And so I was told from a very young age multiple times, don't do this. My parents didn't continue that for very long because they soon realized that, it's no help. It wasn't supportive, right? And so by that point I had already learned, though, that, like, how do I describe it? I had learned to not express the tics as much as I actually could or wanted or desired to. Like, my tic moved the body, but there was always then another part of me trying to stop the tic from moving the body. So I spent years in my teens battling myself, fighting myself. It was like, the body's moving, okay, the body's moving, but no, I don't want the body move. Focus on not moving the body. Hold, suppress, don't do anything. Can you feel the energy of that? It's like suppressive, it's painful, it's tight, it's tense. It takes up so much energy, life force, just freaking energy. And so I'm there, like, pushing it, holding the tic down. I don't want to do it. I'm going to focus. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. And I spent years of my life having built up the patterns of me fighting myself. So there was the natural movement of the body wanting to tic on my nose, or my shoulder, or my wrist. And there was another part of me going, don't do that because somebody's going to see me. It's going to be really embarrassing. I need to present myself to the world in the right way, in the good way, in the best way. And so this was what I was living in for years during my teens. Now I can look back and introspect the patterns that I had. I mean, at the time I was unaware of this, right? Because at the time, like you're a kid, you're a teen, you don't know what's going on. You're not aware. Your egoic self and your deeper self are still kind of forming, or like who their expression is in the world, what we are, what this life thing is. Like we don't know what's going on, and so as a child, it was started in my teens really. It was sort of 12, 13. I remember the tics starting around that age, not before that for me. And it was just a part of me. Yeah. But for me it was a battle. It was like I could use part of my mind to stop the other part of me doing stuff. But once you create the two internal conflicts inside of yourself, then you have like this intense amount of anxiety all the time as you're holding two sort of expressions or beliefs at once. And that creates the disturbance, the anxiety in the being. When you believe this, but you also believe this, but in the physical world, there's contrary experiences. That then is like, oh no. So I spent, I learned these patterns in my teens, and I lived with these patterns for 20 years, from the age of 13, 25 years, up to 30-ish. Sorry, until my early 30s. So yeah, 20 years. Yeah. So I remember going to the doctor like 2 or 3 times. I think 1 or 2 of the times it was kind of in passing. I was like, and my son, like I was going with my mother, my son has this kind of ticking thing. Is there anything you can do about it? And back then, remember, 20 years ago, I didn't really have anything. In your teens, it'll just pass. Wait and see. That was the default response from the doctors. I think these days now they might, offer anxiety pills and things like this, but that doesn't heal the condition. It numbs you to the experiences of life. It numbs your experience to feel life, right? This incredible blessed experience of living as a human. And so, the pills never felt right to me. I never felt that they would actually do anything, and I never said yes to them. I think one time they said it might be an option, like the 3rd or 4th time I went about it. But even with that suggestion, it never felt open and right for me to do it, so I never did. For the first 2 or 3 times I mentioned it to my doctors, it wasn't really, it was like, does it bother you? Does it affect you? And because of my patterning and my behavior and the way my personality has been formed, I didn't want to make a big deal about it to the people around me, whether it was my parents or the doctor. And so when the doctor tried to ask me if it was a big deal for me, I actually was like, not really. Because I didn't know how to express the pain that I was inside, the emotional pain that I was experiencing inside because of this condition. I was in a doctor's office, and I had, or my mother had, shared how, like, I have to do this tic thing. And the doctor's there asking me, is it a big deal for me? And I'm like, And so you have to see that as a child, as a teen, it was a huge part of my inner world, my inner working of the way I related to the world. So much anxiety and suppression and worry and sort of battling myself, but I didn't have the language or the emotional capacity or capability to express it out into the world so other people could understand what was going on inside me. People might see the movements of the tic if I wasn't suppressing it at that point in time, right? But they had no idea what's going on inside me. And this is the same, right? For so many of us who have lived with or do live with different mental and emotional states that aren't in balance. And the motor tic, vocal tics, Tourette's, it's like a very visible expression of a mental and emotional difficulties. But a lot of people live with these mental and emotional difficulties and don't have a very visual expression into the world, either. I think these days the system's getting better at identifying things like anxiety and depression, but maybe overzealously, if that's even a word. I was chatting to a gentleman, I think in his 40s, recently, who has an onset of tics following some sort of, I think he said, a surgery or an interaction with a doctor or medicine in some way, and then tics started for him. And I can't remember where I was going with that story now. What was I sharing? First of all, I should say that I hear that story a lot. Like, there's a lot of people that end up having a dysregulated nervous system and thus an expression of tics because of medical interventions. If I think back, I don't doubt myself. This is my personal opinion about my body and my health, that the jabs I had when I was young affected my nervous system and my immune system and caused motor tics to happen. I remember getting the BCG jab, like the triple jab, I think. It was a BCG jab. I think that's what it was called when I was 11 or 12. And the tics started soon after that. For me, that was my experience. Am I 100% sure that's what started it? No. But over the years, I've seen so many examples and so many stories of this thing starting after certain medical interventions, either drugs or jabs, which is crazy, right? Which is crazy. For me, I've healed this whole thing naturally. Learning presence, learning awareness, learning embodiment, learning stillness. To me, that has allowed me to move beyond this. There's always a natural way. I was on a train of thought then, and I can't remember what I was talking about. I'd brought up a comment about a gentleman that I was chatting to recently, and I was talking about my childhood, and I can't remember what I was talking about. Sometimes that happens, Sometimes you just gotta let it be, baby. And take a break for a moment and have a cup of tea and see if the thought pops back into my mind or not. Thank you for your patience and being with me as I share a little bit more about, being a child, being a teen with this condition. So it was never looking back, it was a big thing in my inner world, but I didn't have the language to communicate what was going on in here out into the world so that other people could help me. I just suppressed it all. I pushed it down. I ignored it. I put a lid on it. I suppressed it. Maybe you can relate. If you're living with this condition, it's so embarrassing and awkward. You don't want to talk about it. You don't want to share it. You don't want to say to the world that I've got this thing that's really weird. And it feels really horrible. But I promise you, by learning to talk about it, learning the language, the vocabulary of the body, of emotions, of mental health and emotional well-being, you learn to create a framework of then seeing how to share what's going on inside yourself so that you can heal. You can move beyond the condition and you don't have to live with it. Yeah. So I didn't do the medicine. I pushed it down. My parents tried to help a little bit, but they didn't really know what to do. They didn't know how to help me. They didn't have the expertise or the skills or the knowledge of the body or anatomy, or were doctors or anything like this. Like, they didn't have any of that stuff. And the internet wasn't a big thing back then, so it's not like they could do research on the internet to figure it out either. And even online today, you know, I get messages all the time, YouTube comments, even via email, how there's very little people out there that are talking about this condition so openly as I am, and with so much awareness as I am, having moved through it and gone beyond it. There are doctors that talk about it from the perspective of, doctor, well, this name is this thing, and this thing, and this thing. And that doesn't help anybody. It's just book learning. It's not experience. And I lie. Of course it does help somebody. Some people, of course. But there's better and deeper ways of supporting those around us by feeling and communicating with the essence of what we're going through, really connecting with each other. I don't think often doctors are very good at that when it comes to chronic health conditions like this. And chronic doesn't mean forever. Chronic means for an extended period of time. Okay, I'm British. I have to drink my tea. Okay, so I hope that gave you a little bit of a little glimpse, a little peek into how I interacted with and how the expression of the tic was when I was in my teens. It started, 11, 12, 13, something like that. I can't remember the exact date. For me, it was like I think it started like I think it was like an eye. It was an eye one. It was a nose one. I had an eye, nose, and I just kept pushing it down. It's like I kept kind of pushing it down my body. And it was kind of my neck and my jaw for a long time. A lot of tightness in the jaw, like wanting to bite the jaw. Just. But if there's one important thing to take away from this, is the relationship between the body and emotions. It's possible to create the space to see, right, the difference between emotions and the physical body. And for those of us that tic, we're not aware of our emotions as well as we could be. So learning to feel separately than experiencing the tics of the body help us create more space and freedom and room and openness, and thus relaxation before the impulse to move happens. Okay, it's another download for today. I hope you're so well, everybody. I'd love to hear if you have any thoughts or comments or questions below. I'm going to say these things. Hit subscribe as well, and then you'll be reminded if I post some more videos about this condition too that might or might not support you in the future. Okay, take it easy. Ciao.